Here we'll be looking at PSIM and how to set up a basic simulation. So when you open PSIM, you usually get tip of the day as default. You can close that. And you have on the left here, this is the newer version. It has these things on the left, the library browser. And there's all these different elements, and they relate to power, of course, because it's a power simulator, control, various other things. Okay, so to set up a basic simulation, first we need a sort of the schematic, the thing to actually draw the circuit on. So you press this button over here, it gives you an untitled document here. And from here, you can just drag and drop different things onto your circuit here. So let's start with something basic. Let's get a power source. So there's power, control, other. Sometimes you just have to go through and guess, but here we'll start with source. Let's do a voltage source. Double click there. And we can get, let's go with a DC source. Put the DC source here. And if we want to, so double click it and then, or drag it, it'll come up and follow your mouse. Once you click on it, it'll make a new copy. Once you don't want any more, you can press escape and it'll go away. If you want to get rid of one, you can click on it and then press delete. Okay, so now we have this DC source, and let's just do a really simple circuit where we put DC power over a resistor. So we're going to get a resistor. If we go to power, you'll see that there's this RLC branch. So you click on that, and there's a resistor, inductor, capacitor, a full branch, a bunch of different options you can use. We're just going to take a resistor. We take it and we drag it. Follows our mouse. And I've unclicked the mouse, so I let go of the mouse, but it still follows my cursor. If I want to rotate this thing, I want to make it vertical, I can right click, so I'm going to right click, and it'll rotate it. So if I keep right clicking, it'll move it around in a circle until I'm ready to place it. I'm going to place it right here. Okay, and then I'm going to press escape to go back to my normal mouse pointer here. Okay, so there's our circuit. We want to connect them. So we go to this button. This is a wire. Click on that. And this is really easy. I like how easy it is to draw wires here. You just drag and you get your wire. And then once it connects, it turns to a red color. That usually means a circuit connection. And so we can do the same thing here. And so we've connected our power source, DC, to our resistor. Okay, and I'll right click to go back to our normal, oops, just kidding. I'm not right click, that doesn't work. Let's press on wire again to go back to our normal. So this is our normal pointer. You can also click on that. Alright, so now we have our DC source and our resistor, but we need to see what values they are. So we're going to double click on this. So in this window, we see it has a name. So we're just I'm going to call it VS. So VS for source. And maybe we'll make it, instead of 100, we'll make it 10. So this is 10, and the default, you just have to know which one it is. This is in volts. And I actually want to display both of these, just so it's easy when I look at it, I know exactly what it is. So I'm going to press display, check that box here. You can see that the old name just came up, and this too, so this is a value. Once I close this box, it'll update all the values. Okay, so there you can see the values were just updated. And then we have a resistor. I want to double click on that. We're just going to call it R1 is fine. And we can just change the resistance level here as well. So for simplicity, let's just do 1 ohm. Okay, so we have 1 ohm. Oops, I want to see that value as well, just so I can keep track of it. So here we have the name and then the actual value. Okay, so here's our simulation. And we want to simulate it, but we need a few more things first. One, we need a ground. So if we go to sources, there's a bunch of grounds. I usually use this one. We need to reference where ground is. So for our calculations, where exactly is 0? So we grab this ground, we put it here, connects here. You see the dot forms, meaning that it's clearly connected. This is a node. And now this is our ground value, and then this, of course, based on our voltage source, will be 10 volts here. Okay, great. So we should be ready. But we need 2 more things. To run this simulation, we need a control block. So this is simulate. If you go to this block, so control, simulate control, click on this, and you'll see you get this little clock thing. This is your controller for the simulation. So you click it somewhere on the schematic I usually put it in the upper left, and you'll get these parameters for the simulation. So here's our step time. So for now it's 1e to the negative 5. We're just going to stick with that for a second, and we're going to simulate it for 0.01 seconds. Okay, so we'll go with this for now. That's our basic simulation. And we should be ready to run, but we need to actually see our signals. Right now if we run, let's see if we can do this. We run, it runs a simulation, but nothing happens because we're not actually reading any of the symbols or signals. So what we need to do is go to the probe folder, so under Other, go to Probes, double click there. We actually need to read a voltage. So of course we want to read this voltage. We'll just make sure, well, we'll think about it from the resistor side. You know, maybe later we can add something here, or whatever circuit you're making. We want to read the circuit voltage, the voltage over the resistor. So we're going to call this VR for the voltage resistor, the resistor voltage, and we want to measure the current going through here. So this is our current probe, and we're going to put this here. This is the current, and notice this little dot here. This is the direction. So this will measure the current into this dot, so the current from left to right. If we flipped it around, it would measure the current, so we can do it. If we flip this around, this would be measuring the current from right to left, and this is measuring current from left to right. One other note about the voltage. This voltage, when it's just a probe here, it's just measuring relative to ground. So this voltage, whatever this node is relative to our 0, our ground, that's what that will output. Okay, so let's go back to our current real quick. Here we have a name. We'll call it IR because it's the current through the resistor. I'm going to display these just for clarity. Sometimes they display in not the prettiest place, but as long as you can read it, I figure it's good enough. Okay, so I think we're ready now. Let's hit this button. This is Run Simulation. You can also press F8, or you can go into Simulate and then click this. Okay, so here, it's kind of halfway off the screen, but we get another thing. This is called Sim Viewer, and I'm stuck on this window, so I can't move the main window. But we want to look at our two signals. So here we're going to do one at a time. So here's, we'll look at V first. So VR is a signal that we measured through our voltage probe, and we're going to add it. So here, I'm going to move this into the window correctly here. There you are. So here we have one plot, and we see during the simulation time, here's our time, we get a voltage VR of 10 volts. Great, that means things are working. I also want to look at the current. There's two things I could do. One, if I want to look at them on separate plots, I press this button. This will add a new plot, and it gives me all the signals again, and I can choose which one I want to display. This time I want to display IR, so I click here, and the second one will show IR. In this case, it's also 10 because I chose the resistor value to be 10. Okay, so this is how you output those. You don't have to close this, so we're going to go back to the simulation. I would recommend leaving this open, so we're just going to make that smaller, minimize it. We're going to go back here, and now I'm going to change this resistor value. We're going to change it from 1 to, now let's say it's going to be 10, which means that we expect our current to be 1 amp. Okay, so close this, see that the value is updated, and we're going to run it again, so run simulation. This pops up again. We were looking at our old axes, so this is, I don't see the second current here, I should see it here. If we press this is redraw. It should redraw all our axes based on our new values. Here we can see now that the current actually went to 1. Okay, so this is a very basic simulation. To review, what you need to make a simulation run is you need to have this simulation control. So make sure you have that block. You can control these parameters and update them here. So this is for the simulation itself. You can add voltage and sources and then passive components as well, like resistors, inductors, capacitors. I recommend displaying the values so that you can easily troubleshoot just by looking at it. And in order to actually see the signal, you need to have a current probe or a voltage probe. And it's recommended that you have a ground so that you can actually calculate 0. Okay, so you need to have ground, simulation time, and then have probes. Okay, thank you very much.